Hey guys, my name's Dee, this is the Heroine's Corner and welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be talking about my March TBR. So in March I have one readathon, one reading challenge, and the rest is basically up to me to decide what books I want to read. So without further ado, let's get straight into the video. Firstly, I want to talk about the readathon that I'm taking part of, and that is the Wargames readathon, and this is hosted by Booked and Busy, Nicole and her books, and the Awkward Book Nerd. So this Wargames readathon is mostly about quality over quantity, so you get more points for more 5-star reads you read. So a 5-star read, you'll get more points than if you read a 3-star read. So me personally, I've been in the fantasy mood and I really want to tackle my fantasy TBR that's been building for several years now. So I really want to just get through them. In this Wargames readathon, there are 3 different teams. There's the light, grey and dark team, and then in the separate teams there are different people you can be. And in the dark team, I want to be the Temptress, because why not? And there's a list of prompts for that character and I'm going to go through them now and the books I'm going to be reading for each prompt. So the first prompt is read a new release, and for that I'm going to be reading The Gilded Ones by Namina Fauna, and this is supposed to be a YA fantasy which is both brutal and beautiful, and that just sounds awesome. So yeah, this book is basically about a girl who lives in this village, and I think if you have golden blood you are considered impure, and our main protagonist has golden blood, so she's basically outcasted from the village and she meets up with other girls who have golden blood, and they basically form like a warrior group. So I've heard mixed views about this, to be honest, but I'm really looking forward to see this beautiful, brutal kind of juxtaposition in the book. I haven't read a YA fantasy in a long while, so I'm hoping this is the fantasy book that kind of gets me back into that genre. So the next prompt is to read from a new author. So a new to me author would be Evan Winter, so I'm going to be reading The Rage of Dragons, and this is an adult fantasy book, and I've heard that it's been compared to the Game of Thrones, but the comparison that really got me interested in this book is the comparison to the Red Rising trilogy, which is one of my favorite sci-fi books of all times, one of my favorite books of all times. I just absolutely love that trilogy. So if someone's going to say that this book is like that, I'm going to be reading this book. And all I know about this book is that it's really about like vengeance and like revenge, and there's probably going to be dragons in there too. And I really just want to read a chunky fantasy to just get lost in a fantastical world. I've heard good things about this book, so I can't wait to pick it up. So the next prompt is to read a grim, dark, true crime or horror novel, and for that I'm going to be reading My Sister the Serial Killer by Oyinkan Braithwaite, and I've heard that this is a literary horror novel, so I guess that fulfills the prompt. The only way I can really read dark topics in books is if there is some humor in there, just to like lighten things up, because I don't want to read a book and be just completely depressed and sad while reading a book. I need some wit and humor in a book that has a lot of dark themes, and I feel like this is going to be the perfect combination of that. I'm not expecting too much. I just really want a fast-paced novel about a sister who's a serial killer, and apparently this book also has a lot of good social commentary in it as well, about Nigeria, because I'm pretty sure this book is set in Nigeria. But yeah, I can't wait to read this book. And this cover was designed by Michael Windsor, and I just wanted to shout that out because I absolutely adore this cover. Then the next prompt is to read a science fiction novel, and for that I'm going to be reading Rosewater by Tate Thompson, and I've heard nothing but excellent things about this sci-fi novel. So this is a sci-fi novel that takes place in Nigeria in 2066, and I feel like that is just the hook for me. This is such an acclaimed novel, and everyone just absolutely adores it, and I don't really know much about it, to be honest, but I want to come into this book not knowing a lot. And then lastly, we have read a book recommended by a booktuber, and there's no specific booktuber that comes into mind, but I know that this book has been recommended all across booktube, and that is Raybearer by Jordan Ifuko, and this is a YA fantasy novel, and again I'm not sure too much what this book is about, but all I know is this girl has been raised by this woman who she considers a mother, but I'm not sure that she actually is her mother, and she needs to go into this kind of royal court area and like meet up with a guy who shares her same magic. I really want to read this because everyone absolutely adores this novel. I have not seen this novel get less than 4 stars on BookTube. So that is it for my Wargames TBR, and now I want to talk about my Classics Community Challenge book. So if you don't know, classics community challenge is basically read a classic book every month at least, and I've been doing that successfully for the time being. So I'm actually hoping to get through 2 classic books this month because I really want to read these 2 classic books. And the first one is going to be The Invisible Man by Ralph Ellison, and I don't want to really talk about this book too much because a lot of people already know what this book's about, but it's about race and identity in America in the early 20th century. I've always read extracts and sections from this book, but never the whole story and novel. So I can't wait to read this and to just understand why everyone absolutely adores this classic. And the second book I'm going to be reading from my Classics Community Challenge is going to be The Lonely Londoners by Samuel Sylvan. And this is a book that came out in the 1950s. This is a Black British classic, and in this book we basically talk about race and identity after this kind of wave of immigration of after World War II into the UK. So I'm pretty sure this perspective is about like the Windrush generation, and I really can't wait to read this because this book gets referenced so much in other Black British books. These 2 classic books, they really just go hand in hand, I think, when it comes to conversations about identity and race, and I just want to know why everyone absolutely loves these books. So those are all the books that I've kind of strictly set myself to read this March. But the next couple of books I want to talk about are just books that are on my radar and that I'll hopefully just want to pick up and get to during the course of a month. So the first book I want to talk about is Small Island by Andrea Levy, and this is considered a Black British classic, and essentially in this book we're following the perspectives of a Windrush generation and I think one other perspective in the novel. And yeah, I don't really know how to describe this book. I have started reading it. I think I'm about 150 pages in, and we are just kind of having these, the similar discussions about race and identity after World War II. But the way Levy writes this book is really well done. Like I'm already planning trying to read her backlist by the end of this year because her writing is just so great, and I just love how she's just describing things and how the story is progressing. So yeah, I'm hoping to get through this book. It's a bit of a chunker. I didn't know it was going to be this big when I ordered this book to read, but I do want to get to this book, and even though it's having like similar kind of discussions that I've read already in Black British books, I feel like it's always just good to have a different perspective, like the writer's different perspective on those issues, and she writes them and I'm not bored about reading them. So the next book I want to talk about is a real popular YA fantasy, and that is Children of Blood and Bone by Tomi Adeyemi. And this book, everyone just knows about it, everyone loves it. It's going to get a Lucasfilm adaptation, which is wild, and because of that I'm really pushed to actually read this book now. I am going to read it as a standalone and not as a book to start a series because I know a lot of people don't like the second book, so I'm just going to temper my expectations for that and I'm just going to read it as a standalone. So if you don't know, this is a book about a girl who's basically trying to get magic back into her community, and yeah, I don't really want to know anything else other than that. The next one I'll talk about a non-fiction book because I've really been on this non-fiction grind, and that non-fiction book I'm going to be reading is Empire Land by Safnam Sankara, and this is a book about the Empire, the British Empire specifically, and about its impacts on modern Britain and just the lingering effects of empire and colonialism and how we just can't forget about the empire even though it was like disintegrated 50 years ago. We still need to remember the impacts and how race and identity and how we talk about all these things are still a major kind of effect of the empire. So this book I've heard is more of a social commentary nonfiction book than a book really dealing with the history and the historical, all that kinds of stuff. I feel like it's more of a social commentary book, and I'm fine with that. It's pretty short, so hopefully I'll get through it quickly as well. But I'm not looking for a super dense, heavy book about the empire. I just want to know more about the empire, so I feel like this would just be a good book to read. So lastly, I want to talk about a middle grade book, and that is Me, My Dad, and a Rainbow by Benjamin Dean. And I've seen this so much on BookTube and BookTwitter recently, and I've heard that this this is a middle grade that is supposed to make me cry. And if you're talking about a middle grade that's supposed to make me cry, I will read that middle grade. I think this book is basically about a son who finds out that his father is gay and what that kind of does to his family. I just really want to get into this book, and I wanted to read a middle grade this month as well. Just play on my TBR, so I'll make sure I am reading more middle grade fiction, and this just seems like the book for me. So that is it for my March TBR, guys. Please let me know if you've read any of these books or if any of these books are on your TBR. So please remember to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys soon on another video. Bye.